نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم وما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين وكان الله بكل شيء عليما بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمن بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح يا فتاح يا فتاح صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم الأمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it's a great blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has given me and you the ability and tawfiq to participate in this gathering. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this gathering a source of guidance for all of us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this gathering one of the means of our entry into Jannah. In this Seerah class, we are talking about the early childhood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the first session of this class, we understood how the elite of Quraysh used to send their kids away in the desert among certain tribes so that they can be raised away from their families among certain tribes. And what were the reasons behind it? So this was the first thing that we understood in the first session. The second session we understood that how Halima bint Sa'diyah adopted Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and after adopting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how she insisted that she wanted to keep Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam even after the foster care period, which was of 2 years, was over. She insisted because she saw so many blessings in her household after taking care of Rasulullah that she insisted that she still wanted to keep Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Amina, who is the mother of Rasulullah, she agreed to the request of Halima bint Sa'diyah. And during that second phase of the foster care, that the incident of Shaqqu Sadr, the incident of the opening up of the chest of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took place. Alhamdulillah, in our third session we talked about that incident, which is a very important incident, and we believe in it, and there is no doubt about it that there was a certain time when Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, opened up his chest, took his heart out, and hifdhun min ash-shaytani minka, he took a black slither out of the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said that this is from shaitan, this is from the portion of shaitan. And after that incident, Halima bint Sa'diyah, she was so worried about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that she returned Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam back to his mother Amina. And alhamdulillah, in our last session we understood that after Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came back to Amina, after a couple of years, Amina decided to take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Yathrib, which now we know as Medina. And she took Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam over there because there were relatives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who used to live in Yathrib. If you remember, one of the great grandmothers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from Yathrib. She is from Medina. So Prophet had relatives in Medina. So Amina, because Prophet is an orphan, and remember that we are talking about the times of Jahiliyyah. In the times of Jahiliyyah, there is no government, there is no protection, there is no law, there is no order. The only way you can be protected is by your relatives. Your prestige can only be established by your relative. Your protection can only be dictated by your relatives. So the more relatives you have, the more protected you will be. And because Prophet ﷺ, he is an orphan, so his mother wants to take him to Yathrib so he can meet other relatives of him, so he can have all of his relatives around him, so he can be more protected. So Amina took Rasulullah ﷺ to Yathrib when he was only 6 years old, and on her way back, in a place called Al-Abwa, which is still there in Saudi Arabia, she felt sick, and right there and then she passed away. And one of her slaves, one of the slaves of Amina, Ayman, she had her buried right by the people in the same village, in the same town. And her grave is still there to this day. And then if you remember, we have mentioned one of the narrations that is mentioned in Sahih Muslim, which is a Sahih Hadith, and there is no doubt about it, that on one of the journeys, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going back to Medina, it was after Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam became a prophet. He was going back to Medina, and Sahaba were with him, and then he drifted away from the main route. From the main route, he drifted away, he started walking into the wilderness, he found this one grave, he sat down there and he started crying. And Sahaba who are narrating this incident, They said, we never understood why Prophet ﷺ is crying, but he was crying so profusely that his entire beard, mashallah, the beard of Rasulullah was very big and thick. They said the entire beard of Rasulullah ﷺ was soaked with his tears. And he was crying so much that the Sahaba, they started crying with Rasulullah. They never knew what was happening. But when they saw Rasulullah, they started crying with Rasulullah. And finally Prophet ﷺ explained it to them that this is the grave of my mother. And today I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow me to visit my mother's grave. Because in an early Islam, the ruling was that you only enter graveyard with the dead body. You don't go and visit the graves. You only enter graveyard with the dead body. You bury that dead body and then you leave graveyard. You don't stay in the graveyard without the dead body. You go there, you bury the dead person and then you leave the graveyard. Prophet ﷺ said, I especially asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow me. Allah has given me this permission. Now I am allowing you to go and visit the graves of your beloved. So the permissibility that we have in our religion of going and visiting the graves of our beloved, it's actually coming from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanting to visit his mother's grave. And obviously the fact of the matter is that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is crying in this manner. And I don't think I need a reason to explain why he's crying in this manner. We don't need to mention the reason why. Because after all, this is his mother. And he has some memories. Not many memories, because obviously he was only 6 years old when his mother passed away. Not many memories. But nonetheless, this is his mother. And Sahaba said Prophet ﷺ was crying in the manner that we have never seen Prophet ﷺ crying in the same way. And they followed the sunnah of Rasulullah. They started crying with Rasulullah. They never knew why Prophet is crying. They started crying with Rasulullah ﷺ. So there is no need to mention how much love he felt for his mother. How much pain this 6-year-old child must have felt at the time of the death of his mother. Like I said before, I have searched as many books as I can, as many classical books again, as many classical books that are available to find more stories about Amina and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But unfortunately, we don't have any other story. We don't have any other story that is even of semi-authentic in nature. We don't have any other stories of, and the reason is quite obvious and understood. Who is going to record all these incidents in the privacy of the house of Amina? Who is going to be there to see what Amina is doing with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? All the joyful times, all the playful times, all the tears and laughters. Who is going to record this for us? No one is going to be in the house of Amina to record this for us. So it's an obvious reason, it's an understood reason. So we don't have much information about Amina and Rasulullah and their relationship. These were the only two stories that I knew that I have already shared with you in our last session. In tonight's session, inshallah, we are going to learn that how Prophet ﷺ, and subhanAllah, if you think about it, Prophet ﷺ loses his father when his mother was pregnant with him. And then his mother only gets 2 years or 2.5 years to take care of his child. To take care of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before he was 4 years old, before he was being taken care by Halima bint Sadiya, not by Amina. So his mother only get a chance to take care of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam only for 2.5 years. And when he was finally 6 years old, he lost his father and then he lost his mother. So he lost both of his parents when he was only 6 years old. And then he was entrusted to his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. Now again, unfortunately, there is hardly anything that we know about the relationship of Abdul Muttalib and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, other than 2 or 3 stories that inshallah I will share with all of you tonight. There are only 2 or 3 stories. And these stories are mentioned by Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Sa'd. Now before I go any further, I need to tell you, I have already told you about Ibn Ishaq. One of the earliest book of Seerah is from Ibn Ishaq, and this is one of the earliest books of Seerah. Ibn Sa'd as well, his book, he wrote a book called Tabaqat Ibn Sa'd. And he died around 230 Hijrah. So Ibn Sa'd is also one of the earliest scholars, and his book Tabaqat Ibn Sa'd is one of the earliest books of Seerah. So Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Sa'd, their books are the 2 most ancient sources of Seerah that we have today. 2 most ancient sources. So I'm going to use these names very frequently, Ibn Sa'd and Ibn Ishaq throughout. So you should be aware of them. Now these stories that I'm going to mention, one of them is mentioned in Ibn Ishaq and one of them is mentioned in Ibn Sa'd. The story that is mentioned in Ibn Ishaq, it is said that Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would have a raised platform right in front of the Kaaba that was connected to the Kaaba. And remember that Abdul Muttalib, he is the chieftain of Quraysh. I believe 2 or 3 months ago we did a whole session about Abdul Muttalib when we were talking about the lineage of Rasulullah. Who was Abdul Muttalib? What happened when he was a youngster? How he was raised to this level? Why everyone respect Abdul Muttalib? We have already discussed all of these things. And we have also mentioned that Abdul Muttalib lived a very long life, almost over 80. And at this time when he was taking care of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's already over 80 and he's already blind. Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of Rasulullah, he died as a blind man because he was very old. He died as a blind man. So it is said that Abdul Muttalib had a raised platform right in front of the Kaaba, which is connected to the Kaaba. And Abdul Muttalib, around Asr time, when there would be a shade, this platform was under the shade of Kaaba. So around Asr time, Abdul Muttalib would go there and he would sit there, and the people of Quraysh would come to him, and he would discuss the affairs of the people of Quraysh, because after all he is the chieftain of Quraysh, so people would come to him and he would discuss their affairs. So this was a public platform where he would go every single afternoon. He would sit there and he would discuss. And this platform was equivalent to the king's throne. So no one can sit there. Not even his own children or grandchildren can sit there. No one. So one day, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a young man, he came running and he jumped over the platform to sit next to Abdul Muttalib. So he sat next to Abdul Muttalib. Now the uncles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they tried to pull him back down, because they told him that this is supposed to be just for Abdul Muttalib. No one can sit on here except Abdul Muttalib. But then Abdul Muttalib stopped them and he said to them, leave him. He is my son and he has a right to remain here. So out of all of his sons and out of all of his grandsons, the only person he allowed to sit on that platform was Muhammad Rasulullah. And before I say anything else, because we are recording this video, so a lot of people are going to listen to it on YouTube as well. This story that I'm mentioning, it's mentioned in Ibn Ishaq, but he is taking this story from Tabi'un, not from the Sahaba. He took this story not from the Sahaba, he took it from Tabi'un, but there is no problem in relating or narrating that story, because we believe that Tabi'un must have heard this story from their fathers, and their fathers are Sahaba. So obviously, inshallah, it is permissible to narrate these kinds of stories. This is the first story that we know about Abdul Muttalib and Rasulullah. There is one more story, and these are the only two stories that we know. There is one more story, that once the uncles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam out in the desert because they lost some of their camels. So they sent Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the desert to find their camels. Now why did they do such kind of thing? Why did they do? So according to Ibn Sa'ad, listen to this carefully. According to Ibn Sa'ad, they sent Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the desert, even though he was just 7-8 years old, to get their camels back, because Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never performed a task except that he was successful. He was never assigned, Ibn Sa'ad is mentioning this reason, I'm not mentioning, Ibn Sa'ad has mentioned, he was never assigned a task except that he was successful in that endeavor that he did. He was always successful. So his uncles are desperate. Camels are an expensive creature. It's just like your BMW 7 Series. In the desert, camels are expensive creatures. So they are desperate. They cannot find their camels. So they did their mashwara. So they consult each other and they said, okay, let's send Muhammad out, because every time he goes out, it works out. So let's send Muhammad out. But they sent him out alone in the desert, and he was only 7 years old at that time. So they sent him out in the desert. Abdul Muttalib came to know about it. And remember, Abdul Muttalib was blind at that time. He came to know. He was really furious at them. He said, how could you send a small child out in the desert on his own to find your camels? And Prophet ﷺ actually got delayed in coming back. So he got really, really furious. So his uncle said to his sons said to him that, we sent him because he wanted our camels back. That's why we sent him. So Abdul Muttalib, he was really furious. He was walking and pacing around, waiting for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As soon as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came back, he hugged him and he said, I will never let you go out of my sight ever, ever, ever again. So this shows that that Abdul Muttalib had a very much concern and love and care for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But these are the only stories that we know. And as you all know, at the age of 8, for the third time, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam became an orphan. For the third time. First he lost his father, then he lost his mother, and now he lost his grandfather. One after the other, he became an orphan. And you know, again, Ibn Sa'd mentioned this narration. There is a slight weakness in the chain of narrator, but it's permissible to, again, alhamdulillah, it's fine to narrate this hadith. He said that one of the Sahabi asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do you remember Abdul Muttalib? Because remember, Abdul Muttalib, he was the legend of Arabia. Before Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the big guy. Everyone knew about Abdul Muttalib. He was a legend. So Sahaba were curious. They never saw Abdul Muttalib, so they were curious to say that, Ya Rasulullah, do you still remember Abdul Muttalib? And he said, yes, I remember Abdul Muttalib because I was 8 years old when he died. So we know from that hadith that he was 8 years old. And one of the things that Abdul Muttalib did on his deathbed is that he entrusted Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his uncle Abu Talib. Does anyone know the reason? He had many uncles at that time. He had Abbas, he had Hamza, he had Abu Lahab, he had so many uncles. But his grandfather Abdul Muttalib especially entrusted Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Abu Talib. What was the reason? Does anyone know? The reason was that Abu Talib was the only full brother of his father. Abdul Muttalib married 5 women, one after the other, not at the same time. One after the other, he married 5 different women. And from one woman, he had number of daughters and 2 sons, Abdullah and Abu Talib. When he passed away, all of his daughters were alive, and that son, Abu Talib, was alive at that time. Abdullah passed away, but Abu Talib was alive, and he was the only full brother of Abdullah, right? So the rest of the brothers, or the rest of the uncles of Rasulullah, they like Hamza or Abbas or Abu Lahab, Rizwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, they were the half uncles of Rasulullah, not the full uncles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Abu Talib took care of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He lived a very long life. He remained with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He passed away when Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was over 50. So we're going to talk a lot about him, inshallah, in our future halaqat. We are going to talk a lot about Abu Talib. But I want to leave you tonight with a question, so that next Tuesday, inshallah, when you come here, you will have this question in your mind. The question is, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put so much trials and tribulation on that child? He lost his grandfather when he was 8. So why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put 3 orphan situations, 3 most traumatic situations on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And most importantly, he was just a child at that time. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had wanted, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have born in the lap of luxury. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had wanted, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have had his parents until he became an adult, or until he became a prophet, until he would stand by on his own feet. But why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala build such a hard childhood for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He's one of the closest to Allah, not just the closest, he is the closest. He is the most selected person. He is the most special person. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala built such a difficult childhood for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What was the reason? I'm asking you this because someone asked me this question. Someone has already asked me. So inshallah, in our next session, we will try to give the answers of these questions. And there is just one more story. So hopefully we will take only 2 more sessions about the early childhood of Rasulullah. And then inshallah, we are done with it, inshallah. So all of you brothers are requested, inshallah, make some time, come and participate. I promise I won't take more than 20 minutes, inshallah. So come and participate in it, inshallah, it will be very beneficial. Right, brother.